Now we are learning the second half of the paragraph in the mimer, which is called, mimer is the Hasidic discourse, you want to call it, the Hasidic essay, which is called meraglie, bepumia, the Rabbah, and it's from Tafshin Memvav. And the Rebbe in this mimer is going to explain to us a little bit about what it means to return to God and how he has to be done in happiness. All right, the Rebbe here explains that there's a thing in Judaism called tshuva. Tshuva means repentance, but that's not really what the word means. The word tshuva literally means to return. So repentance is really equivalent to the word return in Judaism. Why? Because there's two types of repentance. There's repentance from and there's repentance to. Repentance from means that you leave the bad. Repentance to means that you realize that what you've done up to now is not your full potential. And that when you were born, you were given much more potential than what you have now to do good. And so you return to that good, to that source. Now, it used to be in the previous days, especially before Chassidut came along, that this idea of repentance and returning from and returning to, it was mostly done by, what do you want to call it? Self-negation in a negative way. In other words, to be bitter, to doubt yourself, to hate all of your impulses, not to trust yourself, to realize that everything I've done is, and that I want to do is wrong, and then I'll do it again because that's what I thought was the real me. And you become really bitter and, how do you say, self-destructing. You got to get rid of this bad self. Well, there's something to that. There is something to that. You know, a person trusts himself too much. That's how the book Tanya starts off with. You can't trust yourself too much. But on the other hand, if you don't trust yourself at all, then you're not going to be happy. And being happy is very essential to life in general and to Judaism especially. So nowadays, we have to do tshuva. A person has to correct himself, change himself by means of happiness. So let's look at and see what it says here. Hayidua pitgam rabotenu nisiyenu. It is known, the saying of our rabbis, tracht good vet sein good. Think good and it will be good. Think good and will be good. In other words, to a great degree, you can control or at least influence the situation positively. Or let's take it the other way. By thinking negatively, nothing good comes out of it. Nothing good comes out. But you can't be you have to not be a fool. It doesn't mean you can, just jump into a car and start driving if you never took lessons. What me worry? No. Of course you have to take natural precautions and means, but it means think properly, think positively, and things will be positive. If a person thinks in a way that's good, it brings good. Now this is especially important nowadays with this tremendous scare that's going through the whole world, and a lot of it is very justified, about the coronavirus. But paradoxically, one of the biggest causes of this terrible success of this virus, if you want to call it success, the spreading of this virus, is negative attitude. as dangerous as it is, by worrying and by being negative and by being unnecessarily afraid. I'm not saying not to be afraid. It certainly is a dangerous thing. It doesn't mean you should go around, with your mouth open all the time and say, like I say, what me worry? I should care. No. Of course, you have to take precautions. Yes, but to be overcautious is counterproductive. Overcautious, it actually increases the effect of the disease. A person becomes so overcautious that he can't be happy. He can't think of any of the positive things in life. And even worse, you can't think of your own value. We underestimate ourselves. If we would properly estimate ourselves positively, and we are positive because God personally is creating us, and He's creating each one of us with a potential. And if we would estimate how amazingly effective and game-changing are our thoughts, not just in a psychological way, in a personal way. I'm not talking about succeeding in business and the win friends and influence people. We're talking about influencing God, influencing the whole reality that we're in. What is God? God is, not Jewish definition of God. Just what is God? God is reality, the ultimate reality that there is. If what you see in front of you think that's all there is, then that for you, that's God. The fact of the matter is that there's a creator to all this reality. There's a creator, and He creates everything. That's the message of Judaism. He creates everything constantly. Everything is being created constantly from nothing, and it's being created from good. That God renews the creation constantly from His goodness, from His love. We can feel that. If you don't feel it, at least you can believe it. And even if you don't believe it, at least you can think maybe it's true. At least it's a possibility. That already gives a little bit of an opening in this pressure cooker, which is called the world, the news. There was somebody that asked, I think the Belzer Rebbe, one of these Rebbes, how can we, there was some sort of a flu going around, how can we combat the flu? He said, don't read the newspapers. Don't read the newspapers. You read it, you want to look at the newspaper, look 5 minutes, it's enough. You find everything you want to know from other people. Don't be negative. Think positive in the world. If there's no reason to think positive, that's exactly the reason why you should think. Find something. We're here to change the world, to make a positive effect, not to take the world as it is, not to let the world affect us. Man is here to change the world, to improve the world, especially the Jewish people. They're here to make the world not just an improved place, certainly that's also true, but to make the world a blessed place. Think good. Think who you are. It's like a person, he's got the enemy in front of him and he has a tank with guns in it, doesn't use it. Doesn't use the enemy. Doesn't use the guns. We have weapons for good, and that is our thinking good. Think good and it will be good. Ve'ein tzorich liot kolol in your meriros. There doesn't have to be any bitterness. For instance, saying Tehillim, by saying, for instance, Psalms, weeping with a bitter soul, and giving tzedakah, weeping and giving tzedakah. Good, you should read Psalms, wonderful, you should give charity, but it should be in a positive way to increase the good, to change the situation, and not so much to defeat the bad. In other words, you're changing not from, but you are changing to a better world, and that means you have to be happy. That's why a wedding is happy, because it's a new beginning. It's a new beginning. And you're not even thinking about the past. It's a totally new building of a house, binyan adead, a new thing. And so you can make every moment to make a wedding between the Creator and His creation. Because God is not revealed here. True, everything is one. God is creating everything all the time, but we don't see it, we don't feel it. It's almost like a couple that are married, they don't know they're married. They don't know. They never met. They were never married. They got married once, but they forgot. They got amnesia. They forgot. They didn't know Imagine the great happiness there is. I know that there were people that came from Russia, and they lived together in Russia, Jews. In Russia, there was no family, the whole thing was all messed up. So whatever type of wedding that they had, anyway, they came here. There's a lot of them. There were places where they made like weddings for like 20, 30 couples, Jewish couples that came from Russia, and they weren't. They never had a Jewish wedding. They made a Jewish wedding. It was tremendously happy, dancing and happy like the first time. The same thing is also every moment can be a brand new marriage between the creator and the creation. But we have to think good. A wedding is supposed to be a happy thing. Wedding is supposed to be happy. You don't have to have any bitterness. Ki machshava tova, a good thought, it itself brings good. A good thought creates good. There's a question, you're supposed to believe in God, you're supposed to trust in God. A person could say, why should I trust in God? Maybe I don't deserve anything good. I'm not any sort of a big, holy man or anything. Why should I have any trust in God? Maybe I deserve bad things. So the answer to that is, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you really do deserve things. But if you trust in God, that trust itself is a sufficient merit that you will deserve good, even if you never did anything good in your life. But the trust itself in the creator of the universe, that he's good, and he is good, and that he'll do good, that trust itself is a vessel to draw down good. You don't believe it? Of course, most people don't believe it. That's why the world is bad. And it's our job is to cast away, dispel all that darkness and doubt, and what do you want to call it? The self-minimization. How do you say how do they call it? Inferiority. Thinking that we're really inferiority. We're not inferior. Ki ha-machshava tova, because good thought, one good thought, no matter how inferior you are or you think you are, one good thought connects you to the creator of the universe. And the creator of the universe is good. And it can change any situation. Because they have the promise from our rabbis, the kasher machshava hu ba'ofen shel tov, that when the thought is good, vet zayin good, it will be good. Hari barura davar, it becomes clear that that this is what's going to be. What is a Rebbe? The Rebbes of Chabad, what are the Rebbes? In Judaism, it's based upon these certain great people, Abraham, Yitzchak, Isaac, Jacob. We just finished Mordechai and Purim. One of the most outstanding ones, of course, is Moshe. Moshe was the great leader of the Jewish people, and nobody agreed with him. The Jewish people opposed them at every possible step that they could. And it ended up Paro had to force them out of Egypt, and when they finally got they received the Torah, they didn't want to get the Torah. They said, Moses, you take it. And then finally, when Moses did get the Torah and brought it down, they worshipped the golden calf. In other words, Moshe is the true leader. He's the forerunner of the Mashiach, a true leader of the Jewish people. He forces the people to do things, not things that are above their understanding, that are the opposite of their understanding. A Jewish people like to be sad, they like to be miserable, they like to be negative. And all this comes from selfishness. What's going to be in the future? I don't know. If I don't know, so it's bad. I'm in doubt. And that's this whole Corona thing. We don't know what's going to be in the future. We don't know. This is the worst thing. I don't know what's going to be in the future. This is terrible. Well, the fact is nobody ever knows what's going to be in the future. No one ever knows what's going to be in the future, except for prophets. The future is totally in God's hands. But the present is in our hands. The present right now, God put in our hands. And we can influence the future. And when the future comes out good, we'll see that we've influenced the past. We'll see how all the past was just a preparation for the future. Sort of like, you see a movie. You ever go to a movie, all of a sudden, the last thing in the movie, all of a sudden everything comes together. All of a sudden you realize, everything in the beginning was for a purpose, that you'll have this happy ending. Well, the happy ending won't be a happy ending. It'll be a happy beginning. As soon as you start to think good, as then the world becomes a new world. Thinking good makes good. And the story comes from, where does this idea come from? Tracht gut wird sein gut. Think good and it will be good. There's a story that once there was a chassid that had a son that was terribly ill. Critically ill, fatally ill. All the doctors had given up on him. He went to the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, and said, what am I going to do? Give him a blessing. And the Rebbe said, it depends on you. Think good and it'll be good. And he did think good, and it became good. Omer Tzedek Tzedek, Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad, said to one of his Chassidim, Tracht gut wird sein good, Bekein Oya, and that's what it was. This is a thing, it was an actual story that actually happened. It's not just a philosophy, it's not just a wonderful idea. And especially because it was talking over there about a person who was sick physically. So we can understand how much more so spiritually how it is now. Therefore, what have we learned from this today? You have an ability to be happy. Everyone wants to be happy. Everyone can be happy. And everyone's desire and ability and essence to have a good world. And that's the idea of the Mashiach. He's going to just simply arouse in everyone their true potential. And when everyone reveals this true potential and thinks good, then the world really will be good. As we'll talk about more, God willing, in the next class.